Well, good morning everybody. This is a video I wasn't planning to make actually. I had intended to come in here today and just carry on, pick up where I left off with the BSA A65 Spitfire engine I'm putting back together. But I was rather alarmed when I walked in to see quite a large pool of oil underneath my Tiger Cub on the bike lift. So I thought I'd better have a look and see what's wrong. And first off, I took the crankcase bash plate off, which had a lot of oil on it, and there was a big pool of oil here, and I thought I'd get it off so I could better access the underneath of the engine and try and see where the oil was coming from. And it was actually running out where the kickstart shaft comes out, running down there and under the engine and dripping off. And I wondered how on earth could that be, because it was only yesterday I topped the gearbox oil up until it started running out of the little telltale plug, the combined level and drain plug. And it seemed to take a little while when I was putting the oil in the gearbox before anything started to come out of the little level plug. I've got an example of one here. I'm going to come to this lot in a minute, but basically you've got a standpipe in the drain plug, and if you undo the small nut, that's your level of oil you want when the gearbox is full, the top of that standpipe, and it comes out of the little telltale hole there, as we can see it's doing now. Now, strangely enough, this morning I undid that nut. Obviously I've got it out there, and a few drops of oil came out and then it stopped. So I thought, oh well, fair enough, it's obviously leaked as much as it wanted to, because basically this level plug, as you can probably see if you look across to the one that's screwed into the engine just behind it, when it's screwed in it comes to there, which is below the kickstart shaft level, although the kickstart shaft sticking out there is of a smaller diameter than what comes through the main casing. But to all intents and purposes, that level plug stops at that level there. That's why there's no oil seal or anything on the kickstart shaft on these, because the oil level is just at the lowest point of where the kickstart shaft comes through the casing. Now, for some reason, when I was filling the gearbox yesterday, I put oil in gradually. I didn't splurge a load in, bit by bit, until I started seeing oil coming out of here. Now, whether there was a partial blockage in the standpipe, or whether the oil was just so thick it took a long time to come through, but I doubt that. I think there may have been a blockage, because I screwed the plug back in when the oil seemed to slow down coming out of it, and obviously I took that ride last night to see the Christmas lights, came back, put the bike back on the bike lift for this very reason, to put it on something clean and see in the morning and hopefully not see any oil leaks. But I had done. But the reason that I've had the oil leaks is because the gearbox was over full, so there must have been a blockage or a partial blockage in this, because when I took the drain plug out this morning, the level plug, sorry, when I removed the level plug, I got a few drops of oil and then it appeared to stop. I went upstairs into the loft to get this lot for what I'm about to do shortly, and by the time I came down, as you can see here, there's oil coming out of it again. So we're still above the oil level even now, even though we've lost about this much, plus what's soaked into the cardboard I got on the bike lift and everything. So the gearbox was and is over full. Now, obviously, the oil is either running along the shaft from the gearbox, or else this compartment here is full of gearbox oil. I doubt that very much, and I'll come to that right now. The inner casing has got this tiny little pinhole there, so any oil that did run out from the kickstart shaft, or any other means it's got of coming out the gearbox into this compartment, it would gather in here. Alright, it might leak at the gasket joint if you haven't got a very good seal there, but you should have. There's a pinhole right there. So any oil that came out of here would gather in here, and you got that pinhole, so it's got access to go through that. See that black dot there just above my fingertip? Remove that. And that pinhole, there's the back of it, leads into this chamber here where the oil pump lives. And in there, you guessed it, we've got another pinhole down the bottom there, leading straight into the bottom of the crankcase there. So any lost gearbox oil, or lost internally gearbox oil, eventually finds its way into the crankcase, where it'll get scavenged with the engine oil and pumped back to the oil tank. So that's another good reason for watching what oils you use and mix and whatever, and keeping everything maintenance wise, keep up with your oil changes and so on. Otherwise you could end up with gearbox swarf in your crankcase basically. But anyway, I reckon that once this stops dripping here, the level plug one, we've still got a little bit of residue running down here, but I reckon that once the oil stops dripping out the level plug, it'll stop weeping there and we'll be good to go. Although I may well find that if I start the engine up, that it might smoke quite heavily for a little while, because there's probably certainly an amount of gearbox oil got through those little holes there and into the crankcase, where it'll be scavenged out and returned to the oil tank, which is rather full already, because I changed the oil yesterday and filled it up to the max and a little bit over actually. In fact, I had a little bit blowing out of the pipe from the frothing tower, I noticed. In fact, you can see a little bit of it there now, because I got a little bit carried away and overfilled this. But that leak there, that's just excess oil blowing out from the frothing tower pipe. This is as a result of my inadvertently topping up the gearbox, thinking that it had lost a lot of oil when in fact it hadn't done, and it just took a long time for oil. Look, there's even more of it coming out of that now. So I'm just going to let this stand until that oil stops coming out the level plug, and then I'll know that the gearbox has actually got the correct and adequate amount of oil in it, and hopefully we won't be making a mess underneath the bike anymore. But that's a little something that I only really thought about that in recent times, and it just registered when I was pursuing this oiling. I thought, I know that the crankcases are undamaged, I know everything was put together carefully, and I know in the past it's held oil, but while there's oil coming out there, the oil level in the gearbox is higher than it needs to be, and there's a very strong possibility that some of the excess is going into the crankcase. So there's one that might interest a few people, and it might explain why Tiger Cubs in very good mechanical condition can sometimes smoke a bit when you first start them up. They may just be burning off a bit of gearbox oil that's managed to wheedle its way into the crankcases. So you live and learn, as I have done.